All right, let's just jump right in. Picture this, a heat wave that lasts for an entire month. Sounds like something out of a movie, right? Well, for over 1 billion people in India, this isn't science fiction. It's a very real and frankly a very scary possibility. So today, we're going to break down the latest climate science and see what's really in store for one of the world's most vulnerable nations. And look, this isn't just about cranking up the AC or having a few uncomfortable summer days. No way. We're talking about massive crop failures, life-threatening heat stroke, a kind of strain that tests the very fabric of society. And the thing is, scientists now have a much clearer and honestly much more alarming picture of what's coming down the pike. So, what we're digging into today comes from this absolutely groundbreaking new study, and it paints a really stark picture of India's future. The findings, they're a massive wake-up call, a critical warning for a country that's really on the front lines of this climate crisis. So, you might be asking, why India? What makes it such a perfect storm for this kind of heat wave crisis? Well, it's really a combination of a few big things. You've got a climate that's already prone to some pretty extreme heat. You've got this massive, densely packed population, and then you throw in the accelerating impacts of global warming. It's a recipe for disaster. Okay, so how do scientists even begin to predict something like this? Well, they use these incredibly powerful climate models. And for this particular study, they used a really key metric, something that goes way beyond just the number you see on a thermometer. It's all about understanding how heat actually feels to the human body. And that metric is called the excess heat factor, or EHF. Here's why it's so important. It's not just about how hot it gets at 2 p.m. It also accounts for something incredibly dangerous about heat waves, those nights that just don't cool down. When that happens, our bodies get zero chance to recover, and that's when things get really serious. So, using this EHF, the researchers looked into 3 possible futures. Each one is tied to a different level of global warming. And it's super important to remember, these aren't just random numbers they pulled out of a hat. They represent the choices we're making right now as a planet. They're linked directly to the targets in things like the Paris Accord. All right, now we get to the core findings of the study, and this is where things get pretty wild. The projections for India show a future where our whole idea of a heatwave season gets completely turned on its head. See, it's not just that heat waves are gonna become more common. The really scary part is they're projected to show up way earlier in the year. We're talking about turning what used to be a rare spring event into a brutal new normal. Okay, get this. The study projects that by the end of the century, the severity of a heat wave in March could increase 18 times. 18! That's not just a small change. It's a complete rewrite of when summer begins. And it doesn't stop in March. In April, the potential increase in severity is 9-fold. Think about what that means. These super early heat waves can absolutely devastate crops and catch millions of people totally unprepared. And it's not just about how severe these heat waves are, it's about how long they last. Historically, the longest heat wave in a year was maybe 4.5 days. Okay. In a world that's 1.5 degrees warmer, that more than doubles to 10 days. But what about a 3-degree world? Well, it just skyrockets to over 30 consecutive days of extreme heat, a full month. Just imagine that. Now, as you can probably guess, this isn't going to hit the entire country in the same way. The impact is going to be felt differently depending on where you are, and the study actually pinpoints the specific regions that are set to become the new heat wave hotspots. So we're looking at the Himalayan, coastal, and northeast regions as the most vulnerable. In the coastal areas, it's pretty intuitive, right? The high humidity is just going to make that heat feel so much worse. But what's really wild is that even the mountainous Himalayan region, a place you think of as cool, is projected to see a huge jump in extreme heat. Okay, so there's another really important layer to this. The total risk to people, what scientists call exposure, is basically driven by 2 main things. And the study does a great job of pulling them apart so we can see what's really going on. So think of it like this. On one side, you've got the climate effects, just more and more dangerously hot days because the planet is warming up. Simple enough. On the other side, you have the population effect. More people are living in these areas, so there are more people in harm's way. But here's the kicker. The study also looked at the dangerous way these 2 things combine and multiply the risk. Let's look at the most severe warming scenario. This is one called SSP 37.0, which basically means a future with high population growth, and we keep pumping out a lot of carbon emissions. In that future, it's the climate change and its interaction with population that are overwhelmingly driving the risk. So climate change by itself, that's about 38% of the increased exposure. But that dangerous interaction we just talked about, a hotter climate and a larger population, that's responsible for an even bigger piece of the pie, a whopping 43%. Look, I know these projections are incredibly alarming, but, and this is a really big but, they are not inevitable. The difference between those warming scenarios we looked at is absolutely massive. And what that really means is that the actions we take today, they have enormous consequences for the future. And here's a statistic that just really drives that point home. Just 1 degree of avoided warming, we're talking the difference between a 2-degree and a 3-degree world. That alone could reduce the total heat exposure in India by up to 73%, nearly 3/4. That single degree isn't just a number on a chart, it represents a monumental difference in human suffering. So at the end of the day, the science is crystal clear. The path we're currently on leads to a future of unprecedented, dangerous heat for India. But other paths are still possible. Every single fraction of a degree of warming that we can prevent matters more than we can imagine. The choice, really, is ours to make.